He's traded the glasses for a softer look and the sharp barbs for something a little softer as well. But is the new Pierre Poilievre here to stay?
Plus, why is your next what your next federal election ballot might look like? It's going to look a lot shorter if an MP committee gets its way.
And as streaming prices soar, Canadians are pulling the plug on cable in record numbers. Politics, protests, and your pocketbook. Episode 76 of Night Talk Canada starts now. From Montreal, I'm Gary MacDonald.
And from Tulum, Mexico, I'm Eddie Kalik, with an invitation to join the conversation tonight. Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Well, for years we've known Pierre Poilievre as the sharp-tongued attack dog of the Conservative Party, but lately we're seeing a different side, softer lighting, no glasses, and a somewhat kinder approach. Is this genuine evolution or just a strategic coat of paint? And Eddie, there has been a very definite difference in his whole demeanor during his trip to the UK and Germany and through the US in the past week. Very, very, very different. And then, of course, finally appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast, the most popular podcast in the world. He originally last year during the campaign turned it down. This year he reached out himself and said, okay, I'll come on, and went on almost 2.5 hours and did a really good job. Didn't fall into any of the traps that Rogan was setting. He just worked around it and did an admirable job. Then yesterday in the House of Commons, he was back. And here is near the beginning of the speech that he gave in the House yesterday.
Americans understand that it is in our interest as a continent for our two separate countries to, while they maintain their sovereignty, to work collaboratively to make us both richer, stronger, and safer. And I shall say that I kept the Prime Minister well informed of all these developments while I was abroad, and I look forward to meeting with him to report on my findings, to compare notes, and offer recommendations on how Canada can become stronger at home, more affordable at home, so that we have the leverage abroad to achieve tariff-free trade with our American partners.
Now you'll notice that he made mention of the fact again, and he did a couple of times in scrums with reporters as well, that he did keep the Prime Minister informed as to what he was doing, what he was hearing, all the time texting back and forth. They've become text buddies, apparently. And right. Of course, as he said, he plans to give a full report to the Prime Minister, meet with him sometime this week and give a full report. That's a whole different tone that you're hearing, you're even feeling, you're seeing. Even his facial expressions are different. The angry look seems to be gone. Mm-hmm. And it's a somewhat more of a compassionate look. He's serious about his business that he has to conduct, but still he's notched down at least a couple of notches. At least that's what I'm seeing in watching him in some of the clips that I saw from his trips. The same idea. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch a lot of Pierre while you've been away, but I don't know. Maybe you're sensing it and as well.
Well, you know what, Gary? I'll say it, and I've said it, and I'll say it again. Would the real Pierre Poilievre please stand up? This is something that you and I have discussed often. And I think both you and I have been both critical and also gave accolades where they were due. In the last 2 weeks, I'd be very, very hard pressed, Gary, to not give the man accolades. Um, well, first of all, two points. My first reaction to the leader of an opposition of a country going around the world or seeing our neighbors and having discussions about Canada's plans and programs. Personally, and maybe I'm old fashioned, but I really don't feel that's quite the correct thing to do. Unless he's acting directly under the behest and request of the leader of the country. So that's just how I feel about it. But I'll tell you what. Pierre Poilievre, with his trip out to Europe, him going through Motor City, and then spending time on the Joe Rogan show. I really have to tell you, from the clips and what I have actually seen and read over the last couple of weeks, you know what? Where was this format of Pierre Poilievre? A, during the election. B, during the initial part of Parliament in session, when he actually won his seat in Alberta. I just didn't see this man. And I think you're absolutely right, Gary, in terms of his body language, both while he was on the road and being interviewed on the road, again, while being interviewed by Joe Rogan. And you saw that he tried to set a few traps, like you'd said. He didn't fall for them, and he really, really answered the direct, tough questions with pride as a Canadian, first and foremost. And you know what? And with an ease, Gary, it was an ease that I've never seen in him. He looked comfortable. Even this clip that you just showed about the last question period in Parliament, I've never seen him at such ease, and it looked so natural, Gary. It didn't look forced. Now, is this the real Pierre Poilievre from now moving forward, and maybe the man finally came out of his shell? As opposed to coming out and loving every microphone he sees and running to every camera he sees for his 15-second blurb. I really hope so. Just based on what I've seen the last 2 weeks, I really have some sense of hope that this man has actually learned his lesson and his natural self is actually coming out. And why is that important? I know, to me, Gary, and I've mentioned this very often to you, when you have somebody who wants to be the leader of my country, he has to be able to reach me. He has to be able to speak to me, not at me. And this is the first time I've actually really felt that he reached me. And I can be the most difficult people to reach, but he actually spoke to me, both on the Joe Rogan show, what I've seen in his interviews from the media scrums after his visit. I don't know what to say, and I'll circle back. Will the real Pierre Poilievre please stand up? And I'm hoping that this one that's standing in front of me the last couple of weeks is of things yet to come, Gary, to tell you the truth.
Well, there is a very, very solid reason why Poilievre has had to turn it around. First of all, look at the results of last year's federal election and how they had a 25 point lead going into the election campaign. It was starting to taper a bit after Carney won the Liberal leadership. But going into that campaign they still had between a 20 and 25 point lead, depending on the poll you were reading at the time. And we all know what happened. They turned around and they lost that lead, and the Liberals came roaring back from virtually almost in the same fate as the New Democratic Party, or headed in that direction anyway.
Right.
And won the well, they squeaked out a minority win in the election. Now, the best thing the Tories could say was, well, we increased the vote count and our share of the popular vote. But you didn't win the election, and you lost a major lead.
Right.
Poilievre seems now to be, he'd be very quick to turn it around to the positive talking point about, you know, the vote increase and the popularity percentage. But now he seems to have accepted the fact that, yeah, you know what, we lost. Yes, I've lost 3 members across the floor to the Liberals, and I know that there has been more discontent within the caucus in some areas. What really counts now is they're still looking at the polls, and depending on the poll and looking at it from mid-February to just in the last week or so, the Liberals are still out in front by anywhere between 10 and 15 points.
That's considerable.
In building in areas like Alberta, for example, they're starting to gain some strength in Alberta, which is hardcore conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that, and you know, really, they're, you know, the Liberals are ahead, and they're ahead, like I say, by about 10 to 15 points. The Conservatives are stuck in the low to mid 30s as far as percentages are concerned. And of course, the NDP has collapsed into single digits.
Yeah.
And I believe their leader will be announced. Their new leader will be announced. I believe it's this weekend. Anyway, so with the Liberals consistently posting those leads, it's one of those things where he has to come out and start trying new things, because the attack dog style is not resonating at all. And when you get right down to it, when I look at numbers, and I'm just scrolling through some background numbers now, Mark Carney is preferred by 56 to 57% of the people polled. He's preferred as prime minister. Poilievre is sitting in around 22%.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 30-plus point lead for Carney.
Yeah.
That's more than a honeymoon.
Yeah, and that's
we're almost a year into the mandate after the last year's federal election, and he's got that kind of a lead.
Yeah.
Normally, the bloom on the rose is starting to fade by now, and especially with everything that's been happening, as far as what the folks south of the border have been doing and buttons they've been pushing and everything, and
Right.
the economy and the impact of the war that they started on the economy. He's still out in front, and even though there have been areas where we signed a lot of memorandums of understanding, but not a lot has happened since then. And even like the one on the pipeline proposal in Alberta, one of the major projects, they're going to miss their April 1st deadline, or it appears they're going to miss their April 1st deadline of getting all of the agreements in place to get things
moving.
rolling, to get shovels in the ground.
Yep.
But that's not impacting Carney's popularity at the moment. And I think he got a real boost from his speech in Davos earlier this year. People, their leaders and business people around the world still talking about that speech.
Yeah.
So I think the real story is that he has, and he's also like the Liberals are picking up some soft NDP voters, like the NDP has been just sort of flailing, and so some of those voters are starting to look at the Liberals, and the Liberals and Carney seem to be more solid and making more sense. So
Yeah.
there's that aspect. And even there may be some very progressive conservatives on the conservative side who are looking at Carney, because even the conservatives have accused Carney of taking their ideas and running with them. So there's that aspect of it as well. And I just want to play one more clip from yesterday with Carney, Poilievre's speech, where he does, after giving his report, if you will, on his trip, he does come back around and does his job as an opposition leader. But really, again, the approach is different.
And though I made a point of not criticizing the Prime Minister on foreign soil, I return here where it is precisely my constitutional obligation to do just that. Not out of any partisan interest, but out of an interest in pursuing the truth. He promised that he would give us the fastest growing economy in the G7. We now have the only shrinking economy in the G7. He promised affordable food. We have the most food inflation in the G7. He promised that we would have a solid economy. We now have the worst housing costs and the highest household debt in the G7 and the second highest unemployment in that group. He said that he would negotiate a win with the presidents. Here we are today. A year later, no win, no deal. Tariffs on aluminum and steel have doubled, and on Canadian lumber, they have tripled. He promised that he would build projects with record speed, and yet his major projects office, which this House rushed into existence in 5 days back in June because the Prime Minister said it was an emergency, has still not approved a single project of any kind almost a year later.
And
What a different delivery.
exactly.
Like, seriously, yeah.
And the rest of this speech was like that. I didn't see today's question period, and I'm not sure if he was actually in question period and the Prime Minister was there as well. I don't know. But yesterday, when I saw this, I thought, wow, like it is altogether a different Poilievre.
Certainly.
The question, though, that we're all asking, Eddie, is, as you implied earlier, is will the real Poilievre stand up, and how long is it going to last?
Right. And if it does last, my next question is, where the hell have you been?
Yeah.
Right? You know what, Gary, I think time will tell. I think from some of our previous shows, some of our viewers had commented during the show and while they were watching the video clips, does leopard change its spots? And I think, you know what, that'll come out the next month or so, next month and a half, now that he's back in town. And we'll see what comes from the leader of the Conservative Party, and how he delivers, how he presents, how he basically represents the country from a business vantage, and represents the country as a leader of the opposition, and holding Carney's feet to the fire, just like he rightfully did on that clip he just showed us. There was little showmanship in it. There was little bantering back and forth. There was little shouting from his people in behind him, cheering every second word that he says. This was a totally different leader of the opposition, and I'll tell you, even his backbenchers, a complete different facade in the House of Commons during that debate and discussion. I'm not going to say I'm surprised. I'm more of taking a position of where have you been, and if this is you, welcome, nice to see you, and let's see what happens moving forward, Gary. And you know what? we're kind of asking ourselves too, why the sudden change? Um, was this a political change that he needed to make for his survivability as the leader of the opposition and the conservative party? Did they basically sit down and say, well, what's working for Canadians? What are Canadians looking for? I think one, he's learned that he has to be able to reach them, and the last 2 weeks he's done that. You look at him sitting for 2.5 hours with Joe Rogan, which is a pretty heavily conservative podcast, and actually it is the most popular podcast in the United States. Why go there now when he didn't go there the first time, right? Who is he trying to reach? How many Canadians actually listen to that? You'd be surprised. I dug up some numbers, Gary. I mean, in terms of his decision to go out there and really, really set the stage in terms of changing, in terms of his coming out. Let's call it a coming out party. Mm-hmm. I mean, his audience, number one in the USA, 65% of his audience is American. Second biggest chunk of his demographic carries from the UK, 8 to 12% of his audience. And lo and behold, 5 to 8% of Canadians are regular viewers of his show. You know what? 5 to 8%, that's a considerable chunk of change. And most of his demographic is between 18 and 34, right? This is the demographic base that helped win Trump the election. Maybe this is a target that he needs to go after too in Canada. Regardless, Gary, he did put on a very Canadian face. He backed his prime minister, and at the end of the day, he is his prime minister. He pretty much backed him up in terms of what he'd like to see happen for Canada, with Canada and the United States. He held himself quite well. He actually looked very prime ministerial, if I may dare, which is not something you and I have said very often. Right. Looking very prime ministerial. Good for him. There's hope. It's great to see. And then there's the other piece of, why is it that make those changes now? Well, you know what? If you recall, Gary, during Carney putting together Team Canada to respond to the tariff threats and Donald Trump, he couldn't invite the opposition leader to sit in that session because he had lost his seat in the Ottawa-Carleton region, right? So he couldn't sit there. You know what? Maybe this is his opportunity to actually be part of Team Canada. So it's not just the prime minister and the premiers of all the provinces and territories, that this could actually include the leader of the opposition. What better way for Pierre Poilievre to get the necessary exposure through all constituencies in Canada by actively participating in Team Canada? Because at the end of the day, the more you have surrounding that table in terms of solid leadership, A, the better it is for the country, B, the better it is for you and me, and C, the better it is for Pierre Poilievre as well. So I think this entire strategy of his, whoever's giving him the necessary coaching, or he's just taking the lead and saying, this is how I want to be able to act and behave as the leader of the opposition party and the Progressive Conservative Party. This is how we're going to move forward, and the real me is going to come out. So you know what, Gary? Right now I'm looking at a win-win-win-win situation for everything that's happened the last 2 weeks for Canada, Pierre Poilievre, and his work with Prime Minister Carney. And Prime Minister Carney is no fool. He brings very competent people to the table for any discussions and any advice. And you know what? Pierre Poilievre could be a valuable resource for him as well. So I see this being as a win situation for everyone right across the board. And I'll just end by saying, will the real Pierre Poilievre stand up? And I hope this is the real Pierre Poilievre that's been presented to us the last couple of weeks.
All right, let's move over here quickly to a comment. And Monel says he may be seeing what is happening in the States in the blue wave coming. Bullying isn't working anymore.
Hmm.
So, oh, sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, it may very well be that, Eddie. There was something that you said a few minutes ago, and I was going to pick up on it, and now it just escapes me. But the bottom line of it is, I think he realizes after getting the leadership review over with at the end of January and coming out with 87% support, that sent a message from at least the party itself that, we're still behind you. But he also realized when looking at the personal popularity numbers before and during the campaign and then after and up until, well, even now, still current, he hasn't made a dent yet. It'll be interesting to see in the next 2 weeks any of the polling that comes out, and there will be, as to has he managed to garner some momentum and now starting to pick up a bit of support, both from a party standpoint because of his trips, and also from a personal standpoint because there's one. This is what I wanted to say. The one common theme that I have witnessed from any discussions on any of the Canadian news networks and even some podcasts that I've been watching, and that is it didn't matter which stripe the pundits were from or leaning, they all were saying the same thing, that Poilievre did an excellent job. He looked like the prime minister of a government in waiting.
Yeah.
And that's a huge turnaround to be getting that kind of consensus from all sides.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see, as I say, how that translates in new polling numbers in the next week or two, for sure.
Yeah. And the next 4 weeks, Gary, are pretty important with the by-elections coming up and whatnot.
Yep.
We're going to get that into that in segment 2, but all of this is extremely important. That's going to set the stage for Canada for the next 3.5 years, for sure, the next 3 years. But also, Gary, you also have to think, if most of these by-elections swing to the Liberal side, and that's what the expectation is, very, very slim margin for majority government. And you know what? All it takes is somebody not being available or whatnot for a motion not to be carried on the floor for to have a vote of non-confidence. So is Pierre Poilievre at this particular stage ready to head into an election based on the polling numbers you mentioned right now, Gary? No. So if anything, the more time he is given to rebuild his profile as a prime minister, the better it is going to be for him and the Conservative Party to be a better opponent if a snap election is called for one reason or another. So it's going to be extremely, extremely interesting the next month or two for sure, Gary.
Yep, absolutely. As I say, I can't wait to see some of the first polling coming out in the wake of all of this as well.
Yeah.
So, and with that, Eddie, I guess it's time for us to move on.
Yes. So, Gary, coming up, a Commons Committee is recommending some changes to prevent the long ballot protests in future elections.
Not happy with your current web hosting service or ready to launch a new web presence? Check Web Hosting Canada, WHC, a Montreal company with its servers here in Canada, a 99.9% uptime guarantee, and 24/7 expert support. Plans start at only $3.98 per month. Now, I've been a satisfied customer for almost 5 years. You can get more information by clicking the affiliate link in the description below.
We've seen the photos of ballots, which are the length of a kitchen table, Gary, a tactic used to protest the first phase of the post system, the first past the post system. Now, a parliamentary committee says enough is enough. They're calling for rule changes, but does this protect the process or stifle dissent?
Well, we've had a discussion about this before, but now a parliamentary committee has taken the bull by the horns, and not a moment too soon, Eddie.
Yeah.
When you think about it and go back to last year's federal election, where we had a ballot in the riding that Pierre Poilievre had served in 20 plus years,
Right.
and lost. And sure, the length of the ballot may have played into it to a certain degree, but I think there were other things, as we both know, at play there as well. But certainly, when you have this kind of a protest, as they call it, it really does leave a lot to be desired. It really, really does.
What did the poor voters in Carleton have? Almost, 219, 220 names to go through? Something
Yeah,
ridiculous like that?
it was like, well, there's the ballot in the picture. It's about 6 feet,
Yeah.
almost 7 feet long. Yeah, ridiculous.
Oh.
So the recommendations from the parliamentary committee for qualification changes, and this is one way that they're hoping to cut into the foolishness. Reinstatement of a monetary deposit. Definitely, to me, democracy is a privilege, and if you're going to offer your name, you do so in a serious manner. It's a serious step you're taking, and if you're really convinced that this is something you want to do, you should be prepared to at least put a deposit down. And if you violate any election rules, or maybe even we set a minimum percentage, anything above that, you get your deposit back, or a portion of your deposit back. Anything below, you either lose the deposit or a portion of the deposit, I think would be a fair way of doing it, personally. And I think it would make a lot of people stop and think before they put their names forward. Now, it was struck down by the courts actually back in 2017, the deposit for candidates. But really, if you want to ensure that candidates are serious about offering, then you put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly.
So I think that somehow they should work that into the election laws of the country. And if you're looking at federal, like, if you have people who are willing to sign your nomination papers, they are probably willing to help you out in some way. So, $1,000 deposit. It sounds like a lot, but if you're garnering support, you get $20
And there's a
here,
serious nature
$50
to
there.
it. You'll get the money easily.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for it to add up. The other thing is increased signature threshold, and that's it's designed to significantly increase the number of signatures required on nomination papers. Currently, most ridings require 100 signatures, and the committee discussed raising this or requiring more rigorous verification of these signatures, because they could be coming from anywhere. It could be the same person signing twice, and some people would be foolish enough to sign one name and then sign a different name, but still in the same handwriting.
Right.
So I think that the increased signature threshold combined with more rigorous verification should be the norm there.
Mm-hmm.
Then witness requirements. In the witness requirements, strengthening the rules for those who witness the collection of signatures, including potential penalties for obtaining signatures before a candidate has been officially identified. And that, I guess, has been going on with some of these protesters that they haven't even announced that they were going to be running. Just the name was there, and they go out and start gathering signatures for this person, and you know, it's a name. That's all, just a name.
Right.
There's really no one behind it at that stage saying that, yes, you know what, I've decided I want to throw my hat in and run for office. So again, it's too loose. And then the official agent constraints. In the official agents, limiting the number of candidates a single official agent can represent to ensure financial transparency and administrative accountability. There should be, I totally agree, one official agent per candidate, and that individual is focused strictly on that candidate.
Right.
If you have an official agent handling half a dozen different candidates, how serious are they? Any of them, when you get right down to it. So, and the other one I skipped over, nomination paper limits. Implementing a limit on the number of nomination papers a single elector can sign, preventing groups from using the same pool of supporters to nominate dozens of protest candidates.
That makes sense.
And that's what led to that picture next to the recommendations, that 7-foot ballot, because they had a group, the protest group, and they just blindly signed nomination papers. It was like a nomination signing farm kind of thing. That's wrong.
Well, yeah. You know what I'd also like to see on top of this, Gary, is some sort of accountability. There's got to be some single entity that's orchestrating this entire activity. I don't think it's just rogue people putting their names in and pushing this particular type of protest. How about some accountability to whoever's putting this together and orchestrating it? I know that it might be a question of individual rights, about having the rights to do such a thing, but you know what? It doesn't really do the public or society any good by doing this. I understand there are different protest is important. I mean, it's our right to do so peacefully, and if there is a particular element that you wish to protest, I don't believe that the electorate, the process of election is the place to actually do that. I remember, Gary, in our earlier days, we had various political parties that were protesting, especially on the federal level. The infamous Rhinoceros Party was one. But they were actually following all the rules and regulations of participating in the election without any sort of public disruption in the form that we're actually seeing right now. I mean, the Rhinoceros Party was a protest party from day one. They had the protest elements in their platforms, which was communicated to everyone. Although they didn't get very many votes, they followed due process in terms of how to properly participate in the general election. The form of protest right now with overwhelming the number of electoral candidates on a particular ballot ticket is it's ridiculous. You know what? I mean, if somebody is putting this together and orchestrating it and putting together to mobilize the different individuals by putting their names on there, whether they're real people or not, I don't know. It behooves us, it behooves the government to equally take a stand in trying to squash this form of protest. Elections are not the place for it here. I 1,000% I agree with you. I mean, what are they accomplishing? Notoriety, not a whole hell of a lot, and they're doing it this time in Tarbonne. I don't think the other two by-elections are necessarily being affected by this. I think their target point is the election in the by-election in Tarbonne. Well, why Tarbonne? I haven't seen anything that basically outlines their protest platform for Terrebonne. So I don't know what to say, Gary. They should find a way to eliminate this once and for all.
You mentioned the Rhinoceros Party, but two of the leaders of this group are holdovers, and some of the other people are holdovers from the Rhinoceros Party. But there are ways to protest. To me, if I had been faced with a 7-foot ballot, 6 to 7 foot long ballot, I would have known who I was looking for on the ballot. But there are some people who would go in and look at that and just be overwhelmed by it, and not, may end up voting for someone they didn't intend to vote for, or maybe they spoil their ballot, or maybe they just turn around and walk out and hand the ballot back just because of the sheer size of it.
Yeah. My late mom and dad would be completely overwhelmed by this. They'd go in and say, "What is this?" and walk out.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that.
And this protest, this kind of a protest, is robbing other individuals of their right to vote. What happens after the election is a whole other story, and open to protest and as well. But you're actually stealing votes from people who do go in and they're overwhelmed by something like this, and get confused by it, and may not cast put their mark next to the right name, or they may just give up and walk out, as you say. That, to me, is stealing their vote, their right. You've infringed upon their right to be able to go in, have a reasonable sized ballot with names on it of people who are legitimately offering, and not playing some silly game of protest, or they think it's a protest. And that's wrong. It's just wrong. And the sooner we get a handle on that, the better for democracy in this country. Now, a couple of things that the committee heard testimony that the group's tactics, such as fielding 40-plus candidates in a single riding, created significant accessibility issues. Ballot size, large multi-page ballots made it difficult for voters with visual impairments or cognitive disabilities to navigate. And processing delays, the sheer volume of candidates delayed the accounting of results and increased the administrative burden on Elections Canada staff. And it would be pretty tough, even if they were doing it electronically, it would still slow things down trying to feed a ballot that length through a scanner.
Well, if you think about it, you go behind your privacy shield, right? When you're voting, you look at your ballot, and at the end of putting your X, you'll maybe fold it up into you'll fold it 4 times, nice and slender, and there you got the hole, and it gets slid into the election box, right? What are you supposed to do with this? Fold this up, and it's going to look like the Encyclopedia Britannica? Where are you going to stuff this? I mean, there are so many things that get in the way for a ballot to be properly, first of all, for somebody to vote properly. They make it very difficult for, probably a lot of people, especially when you're getting up to the elderly. That's point number 1. And then point number 2, this is supposed to go into a ballot box. And if you collect all the ballots that are 200 plus tickers long, you're going to need 10 ballot boxes at least. And then to carry these things out, they're going to weigh, it's like carrying bricks out. It's just preposterous, Gary. I'm really pissed that this is happening in today's day and age, that our elected officials continue to allow it. So I'm not sure whether or not they'll be able to stymie this entire exercise before the next by-election. I certainly hope they can. And if they can't, we just can't continue having this. And there's got to be some laws against it, whether you're looking at municipal, provincial, or federal election. There has to be punishable consequences. You know, if that means money and jail time, I really don't care, because it is the election. You're electing officials to leave your municipality, your province, or the country you live in, and you want to make sure we have the right people in place through proper voting. This is a democracy. You know what? No democracy is perfect, but let's not make a mockery out of the system that's got us to where we are right now. And I agree with them, with individuals wanting to formally protest. The electoral platform is not the place to do it. I'm sorry. No sympathy for me.
No, and same from me. Like I share those views 100%, Eddie. Just the very fact that they would take the time to do this. What's wrong? What's wrong with them? You know, like, go find another sandbox to play in, kiddies, because this one's full.
Yeah, you're right.
So anyway, nothing's in place. There were some changes to the Elections Act previously, but anything that we discussed here tonight as far as the recommendations from the committee, the report with the recommendations just came out this week. And so it's not going to be in place in time for the by-elections next month. No. And of course, you know why they're hitting our riding. It's because it was a one vote win. It was a very, 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 very tight race. So now they're out to prove a point, because I think that there's going to be a solid turnout here in Terrebonne. And I think, as I've said in the past, it's going to be the nail biter, the one to watch on election night.
Yeah.
So, the bloc's going to be fighting, fiercely to get that seat back, because they've held it a majority of the time. And the Liberals have picked up a bit of support here in Quebec as well, at least Carney in particular. So, how's that going to translate? And even the Conservatives have picked up the odd bit of support as well. It's there's a shift that's starting to take place here in this riding, as far as the federal political scene is concerned. I think probably once we start really getting into the provincial side of it, we're probably going to be surprised by the shift that's been taking place there as well. So okay, so with that, let's call that one a wrap, Eddie, and we'll move on to something else.
Up next, the demise of the cable box. But are we really saving money, Gary?
Ecamm Live is the leading live streaming and video production studio app built